Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob Payton here, and I'm going to be talking about in every generation. The stakes have never been higher is what it says in the bottom, and this is, of course, the first book in the new Buffy the Vampire, well, not really Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but Buffyverse series of novels by Kendare Blake. And it says, Frankie Rosenberg wasn't yet alive when her mom Willow, her aunt Buffy, and the original Scooby Gang destroyed the Hellmouth and saved the world from the first evil. These days, life in New Sunnydale is blissfully quiet. Frankie is just trying to survive her sophomore year at the rebuilt high school and use her budding magical powers to make the world a better place. But that world is suddenly plunged into danger when the Slayer community is the target of a deadly attack, leaving the future of the line uncertain. Then Frankie discovers she's sort of freakishly strong. Oh, and there's something Willow never told her about her true identity. Cue the opening credits. Quicker than she can carve a steak, Frankie discovers there's more to saving the world than witty one-liners and stupid hot demons. Now everyone looks to her for answers, but speaking up has never been her strong suit. And it's hard to be taken seriously when your mom is such a powerful witch, she almost ended the world once, while your greatest magic trick is recycling. I didn't know what I was going to get into when I first started this book. I was kind of like, I didn't really, to be honest, know how I felt about them restarting the Buffyverse in a series of young adult novels. But that being said, I am really glad that I picked this up. This is a series, I think, to be 100% honest, this is a series that I'm really excited about. I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I ended up getting I think there is two books out in it now. I mean, I got both of them from the library, and I mean, I just absolutely devoured them. What it says about, the one-liners is spot on. I mean, this, out of all the Buffy tie-in books and stuff that I've read, I mean, without using Buffy, this feels like Buffy, if that makes sense. This feels like I'm watching episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I mean that in like the best possible way. It's the witty one-liners, it's the banter back and forth between, Frankie and her friends that are now kind of tagging along because she's kind of become a Slayer. And we do get an explanation on that, which I thought was kind of really interesting, and also explained how Willow, ended up having this child, and it kind of rewrites some stuff in the comics. It more or less picks up right after the show. And that, of course, is right after the Buffy the Vampire show, not so much the comics. Although I feel like maybe we're getting some comic lore as I was reading. But maybe that's also just me reading too much into it, because obviously the comic book series went on way after Buffy ended and are still ongoing today in various forms. But, this kind of picks up, I'm trying to put everybody's age in my mind, and I'm not doing it very well. Willow's in her 30s. She has a teenage daughter. So I want to say this probably picks up right after the Hellmouth is closed, since Frankie was essentially born when, Willow, if you're someone that's seen at least the last season of Buffy, Willow does the thing with the scythe to kind of close or destroy the Hellmouth the first go around. Although relocating to New Sunnydale, as someone that lived in Sunnydale, seems like a wild thing to do, but that's what she does nonetheless. There is a lot of, throwback characters, so to speak. Oz is living in Sunnydale. He is raising his nephew Jake, who is Frankie's best friend and also happens to be a werewolf like Oz. So that's really interesting to kind of watch Willow and Oz's dynamic as kind of like middle-aged parents, essentially. And Spike, of course, is in here. Spike becomes Frankie's watcher. That's not much of a twist. That happens very early on. Spike has been a watcher to various Slayers over the years. And I think that's an interesting thing for him to do. It also kind of shows what he's doing with his soul. Xander and Dawn are mentioned. They do not make an appearance in this book. I will tell you that right now. They just kind of, it's like phone conversations. The way this book kicks off is there is an explosion at a annual Slayers retreat, and all these Slayers are missing and mostly presumed dead. And that's when Frankie's Slayer abilities get activated, and she essentially becomes the new Slayer on what seems to be a slightly reawakened Hellmouth, as creatures are starting to come there, and one very powerful vampire-like entity has kind of taken up as the local big bad, and Frankie is going to be pitted against them. And of course, Frankie is no Buffy, which I also really enjoy. Where Buffy was athletic and confident going into her Slayer abilities, Frankie is none of those things. Frankie is really kind of what Willow was when we were first introduced to her in, the early Buffy the Vampire series. She's kind of nerdy. In this, she's very eco-conscious. I mean, she's basically a young Willow who now has Slayer powers, but luckily for her, she also has inherited some of her mother's magical abilities. Of course, not enough to make her as terrifying as Dark Willow, but she can still move stuff with her mind and do more than the average Slayer is. She's the first Slayer witch, so to speak. And she does she does make some friends. There is also a demon here. They call themselves the New Scoobies. I'm sorry, I just blanked out right there. They call themselves the New Scoobies, which I did really enjoy. Like I said, this just kind of feels like a Buffy reboot, but in a good way, if that makes sense. It's taking everything that worked in the Buffy the Vampire series, the TV series, mind you, and tweaking it where, the author feels like it needs to be tweaked. And it just works. I don't know. I enjoyed this a lot. We're introduced to a demon named Grimlock, who is the hunter of Thrace. And very quickly, with his interactions with Frankie, he kind of takes on a bit of an angel role. If you're familiar with, once again, Buffy, the Vampire Slayer series, that early angel, while he was kind of a romantic interest, he was also kind of a mentor to the early Slayer. And that's kind of what Grimlock is at this point. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of throwback stuff here for people who've been fans of Buffy and the Buffyverse for a long time. You'll see a lot of similarities, but also they're very original, and I do think there's a lot here for everyone. Don't watch this review and think, well, I can't read this because I didn't watch all 7 seasons of Buffy, or I'm not caught up, or, I've never been into the Buffyverse and I was thinking of reading this first, because you can come in this completely cold turkey, no knowledge of Buffy, and you can read this book and read the second book too. I finished that book as well, and it does enough explaining that you can understand what's going on. But of course, I do recommend that everyone watch all of the Buffy. Watch Buffy, watch Angel, read the comics. I mean, it's all just such good stuff. There's a reason that it's stayed in the zeitgeist for so long. It was, in my opinion, a very, I would think, almost perfect show. I mean, there are maybe some things that didn't age well, but for the most part, it's still one of my favorites today. Like I said, I really did enjoy this book. I think it is, just awesome what the author is doing with it and with the series. I can't wait to see where the series goes. If they do ever bring Buffy back on TV, I hope it ends up being something like this, where, it's loyal to the fan base and doesn't try to rewrite a lot of events and characters, but instead helps them grow and we get to see them in new light. I mean, I like all the parts about Frankie figuring out how to be the new Slayer just as much as I enjoy watching Willow and Oz and Spike kind of fall back to these not only parental roles, but, support roles, which are things that I don't think, maybe Oz was kind of support a little bit. I mean, he did go on patrols and stuff, but really, Willow and Spike were always right at the forefront, and now they're kind of not, right? It's Frankie, it's these new Scoobies, and they're having to stand back and basically watch these teenagers do the same things that, well, not in Spike's case, Spike was the big bad, but in Willow's case, almost got her and her friends killed. In some cases, did get her friends killed, or people she knew and people she cared about killed. And I, think that's really interesting. It's also interesting to see that, the book doesn't shy away from Willow's addiction to magic and how she still struggles with that. So there, like I said, there is a lot of stuff here for older fans of the show and the series and people that never pulled away from the Buffyverse or have been in the Buffyverse for a while. There's a lot of Easter eggs here, and there's also a lot of stuff here, I think, for like I said, new fans to come in. I enjoy kind of seeing where everyone's at in the the modern world. Like it gets fit in here. They didn't do something where they're like, all right, and we're back in the 90s or something like that. So yeah, I enjoy everything that's happening in this book. If you're a Buffy fan, go out and read In Every Generation, and then go ahead and read the second book, because like I said, it just, once it gets going, it goes quick. I like the fact that a lot of the chapters feel episodic. We're not given a whole linear arc, so to speak. It almost feels like, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. It kind of feels like watching a couple episodes of a season of, like, if you were watching Buffy, because the way a lot of the chapters go, they're trying to figure out who the big bad is and stuff, but there's other stuff happening. There's other attacks going on, there's other monsters, there's other lessons, and that's really, some of the things I enjoyed about Buffy, right? We knew Spike and Drew were up to something, and every episode would give us an Easter egg, but there was also like a monster of the day or monster of the week, so to speak, that they had to tackle before they got down to the nitty-gritty of what Spike and Drew were up to. And like I said, this book does that. I mean, you can tell the author was a Buffy fan. It's just so loyal to the series and to the lore. I can't get enough of this. I can't wait to see the direction the series goes into. I've already finished the second book, so a review of that will be popping up too at some point. I will say right now that I loved it as well, so if you're looking for like a negative review on any of these, I won't be the person to give it, because I am completely in love with this series. I think the second book did come out recently, so it might be quite a while before we see a third, but I really hope we do. If you've read this series, haven't read this series, liked it, didn't like it, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you know of any other series that you feel like a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer would be into, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for new stuff to read. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.